Alright guys, welcome back to another one. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the PlayStation 5 version of Daxter. It's absolutely incredible that all of the Jak and Daxter games are now available on the PlayStation Store. Looking at this, I honestly feel like I'm living in a fever dream. Prior to the PlayStation 5's release, if you would have told me that the entire Jak and Daxter series would be readily available this generation, I would have slapped you with a raw tuna. Daxter is without a doubt the better spin-off title that wasn't developed by Naughty Dog. Stacking up against The Lost Frontier, it's like comparing using a fork for soup and a spoon for soup. Let's go with the spoon, and in this case, Daxter is the spoon. It fills in the time skip for when Jak and Daxter first arrived in Haven City at the beginning of Jak 2, leading up to Daxter rescuing Jak out of prison. It's funny because at the beginning of Jak 2, Daxter mentions that he's been looking for Jak for 2 years and that in that time he's been risking his tail. This kind of comes across as quite a sarcastic comment, knowing the character of Daxter, but no, in fact, Daxter literally became a bona fide, full-blown exterminator for Haven City. And the fact that Ready at Dawn Games, the guys responsible for Daxter, managed to make such a great feeling installment for the character of Daxter, where it actually feels like a Jak and Daxter game, more so than The Lost Frontier, which is crazy because that's literally got Jak and Daxter in the title, yet the game Daxter feels more like a Jak and Daxter game. And I really like how Daxter melds the two formats of Jak and Daxter's gameplay, with taking cues from the Precursor Legacy, which is platform heavy, as well as ideas from Jak 2 and 3, which is more of a GTA clone with taking on missions. Daxter sort of brings the two together with a lot of platforming, more so than you would find in Jak 2 and 3, with that mission concept that Jak 2 and 3 has. It's really interesting because looking at the Daxter segments throughout the main games, I didn't like any of them, but here in Daxter, Ready at Dawn have fully fleshed out the character to make it fun to actually play as Daxter. This idea that he's an exterminator taking on metalhead bugs is simply perfect, and that he's actually fun to control. At times, he feels like you're actually playing as Jak. Daxter's got his own flavors though, like the wall climbing, the crawling, the spray gun, which is simply ingenious. The game's levels are essentially built around the spray gun, and it's so much fun to use. Daxter is absolutely a must-play for the entire series. Although it's not developed by Naughty Dog, it absolutely fits into that timeline and explains important things you should know going forward into Jak 2 and 3. This really is one of the best PSP games, and finally, it is available on PS4 and 5. So, what is this version of the game like? Well, it's great, just straight up great. The PSP emulation for PS4 and 5 is actually really good, especially if we're looking in the resolution department. The game runs at 4K. So when Sony mention up-rendering for PSP games, they truly do mean it. The PSP games here for the classics lineup all run at 4K, and they look simply fantastic. On a large 4K TV, everything is super clear and crisp, which is a great way to be able to experience some of those old PlayStation Portable classics. The game runs at 30 frames per second. This comes expected. The game originally on PSP was a 30 FPS title. Not really expecting Sony to go out of their way to ensure that a game can correctly run at 60 frames without any issues or bugs. For the most part, it is a pretty smooth 30 FPS. There are times where it does drop a little bit and get a tiny bit choppy. Certainly though, not to the same degree that The Lost Frontier launched at. The Lost Frontier in the beginning was so choppy, I believe that Sony have gone ahead and improved performance for that title. And quickly talking about The Lost Frontier, like this game just looks bounds better than the state that Lost Frontier launched in. There were insane bloom issues with that game. I didn't come across any visual bugs or glitches throughout my experience of Daxter. I do genuinely think that this version of Daxter is one of the best examples of PSP emulation on PlayStation 4 and 5. I was curious to see though what Daxter would look like running at 60 frames per second, so I applied a 60 FPS hack over on PPSSPP, the PSP emulator for PC, and yeah, it does feel good. Like, it would have been cool if Sony did go out of their way and somehow managed to get the game running at 60 frames without any issues. You'll notice here on PPSSPP that some of the textures are like popping in and out. So for Sony, unless the original product was running at 60 frames per second, this just isn't something I would expect them to go out of their way to do, as of course it would require extra work. Also, the PlayStation Portable emulator here on PS4 and 5 doesn't upscale textures as much as PPSSPP can by 5 times. To be honest though, I actually don't like PlayStation Portable game textures upscaled as much as possible. They start looking really odd when they have received large amounts of upscaling. So the textures and just the visuals in general for this PlayStation 4 and 5 version of Daxter looks simply incredible. Cutscenes here aren't gonna look good, but like again, there's nothing really Sony can do here. These are all FMV pre-rendered cutscenes. The cutscenes are happening in-engine, then it's a different story, but the same can be said for any classic game that is going to include FMV pre-rendered cutscenes. The extra bonus that we get for these PlayStation classics coming to the PlayStation Store is trophy support. So yeah, now all the Jak games have trophy support. Looking at the Daxter Platinum, it's pretty straightforward. It's a case of just simply playing the game. I really didn't have to go out of my way at all to get a single trophy, aside from maybe playing bug combat, which I forgot this was even a thing in Daxter. Throughout the game you collect these cages, which are collectible bugs that you can then use in bug combat for like this turn-based decision-making gameplay type setup. It's really interesting. It's not really that fun to be fair, but there is a trophy for simply just playing it. You will also need to get a gold rank on one of the Dream mini games. This is fine because you'll want to do these anyway, as they do unlock additional perks like increased health or new moves. I was sort of half expecting there to be a trophy to gold all of the Dream minigames, which to be fair, some of these are actually quite difficult to get the highest score possible. So in a way, I'm kind of like happy they didn't chuck that in there. That would have been a little bit mean. And like most of the Jak and Daxter games, there is a trophy for collecting precursor orbs, though you don't have to collect all of them. There's 1,000 here in Daxter, but the highest precursor orb trophy is 500. And this is pretty simple because precursor orbs are scattered all over the place, almost to the same degree as the precursor legacy. You'll be collecting a lot as you just simply make your way through the game. This definitely would have been a harder platinum trophy to achieve if they had asked you to collect all 1,000 precursor orbs and gold rank all of the Dream minigames, but thankfully, that's not the case. I'm also surprised that they didn't chuck in a trophy for collecting all the masks. There's these hidden masks that you can find in the game by destroying these Crimson Guard portraits, and the masks are actually of different PlayStation characters. Look at this idiot. He thinks he's him. It had been a really long time since I played Daxter from start to finish, and going back through it recently, while it definitely is a short experience, reminded me just how fantastic this installment is. It truly is up there with the rest of the main Jak and Daxter games developed by Naughty Dog. So that's the scoop on Daxter. I absolutely recommend picking this up if, for one, you never experienced this game. I've been seeing a lot of people saying that I'm playing this for the first time. Or if you did play it all the way back when, you now have enhanced resolution as well as trophy support. I'm incredibly impressed with this version of the game. However guys, that's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning on in. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to keep up with everything that's going on here. Check out my other horrendous social media platforms. Links in the description down below. A big thank you to my wonderful patrons. I appreciate the support. I hope each and every one of you are having a fantastic day, and we'll talk real soon.